Have you ever stopped to think about what happens to a referee after the game ends? When the stadium empties and the cameras shut off, only silence remains, a heavy, suffocating silence. But that silence doesn't always last long. Sometimes, it's shattered by threats, insults, and hate messages. Referees aren't just the judges of the game, they're targets. Targets for furious fans, outraged players, and unbearable pressure. The cost of a single wrong decision can be the end of a career, and in some cases, even the end of a life. Today, you'll get a closer look at the harsh psychological reality faced by referees, the burden of carrying the responsibility of an entire game on their shoulders, the constant fear of making a mistake, the digital lynching that destroys reputations, and the emotional exhaustion that pushes many to the brink. And in the end, a question that few dare to ask, when the weight becomes unbearable, how far can a referee really go? A poorly awarded penalty. An offside missed. A controversial red card. One mistake. Just one. If a player misses a goal, they get another chance. If a coach makes a bad substitution, there's always the next game. But for a referee, one single error can mean the end of their credibility, forever. Football doesn't forgive. Fans never forget. There are referees who were demoted after a single mistake in a decisive match. Others who simply never got to officiate another major game again. And this isn't just in professional football. The psychological pressure is overwhelming at youth tournaments, amateur matches, even local league games. So the question is, how does anyone carry that emotional weight day after day? Now imagine this, you're on the field, surrounded by players shouting, fans screaming insults, and coaches staring at you with rage. You have fractions of a second to make a call that could change everything. The fear of being wrong is paralyzing. It causes a referee to start doubting their own judgment. Some walk onto the field with a racing heart and cold sweats. The anxiety before a match can be so intense that many suffer from sleepless nights. The result? Hesitant, uncertain referees. And ironically, the fear of making a mistake increases the chances of making one. It's a vicious and destructive cycle. Many referees report feeling intense dread before each match. They know that no matter what decision they make, someone will always be unhappy. This mental burden follows them not just on the field, but into their personal lives. And when a mistake does happen, the consequences go far beyond the game. The media pressure, the online abuse, and even criticism from their own federation make referees carry that guilt for a long time. Some become so afraid that they start avoiding decisive calls, hoping the VAR or assistant referees will take the responsibility instead. In the end, officiating becomes a burden. And a passion for football turns into a real nightmare. When a referee makes a fair decision that harms one team, they immediately become an enemy. Impartiality in football is often not respected, it's hated. If a ref awards a penalty against the home team, they're called a thief. If they give a red card to a fan-favorite player, they're accused of being on the take. If they strictly follow the rulebook, they're labeled as heartless robots. No matter what they do, someone will always hate them. And what's worse, many fans can't separate the professional referee from the person off the field. That's where the real danger begins. There have been cases of referees being harassed at the grocery store, having their children bullied at school, and even receiving death threats through anonymous messages. Impartiality, supposed to be a core principle of the sport, becomes a source of hate and outrage. And it's not just fans who fuel this culture of intolerance. Clubs, executives, and even sports commentators contribute by painting referees as the villains of defeat. Football has become a battlefield, and referees are always caught in the crossfire. The ultimate irony. A referee can never cheer for a team, never celebrate a play, never show emotion. They have to be neutral. But the world of football doesn't accept that neutrality. Before the internet, a referee might have been criticized in stadiums and post-game discussions. But now, the hate goes far beyond the pitch and into their personal lives. All it takes is one controversial decision, and suddenly their name is trending on Twitter. Fake profiles are created to spread lies. Hate messages flood their Instagram. And often, those threats become real. There have been instances where referees' home addresses were leaked online, putting their safety and their families at serious risk. This leads to anxiety, insomnia, and in many cases, panic attacks. And it doesn't stop there. Digital lynching has no expiration date. A mistake can be dragged back up years later, resurfacing every time that referee officiates another high-stakes match. The label of incompetent or corrupt sticks with them permanently. For many, social media has become a war zone. Referees are forced to delete comments, block users, restrict profiles. Some even abandon social platforms entirely just to protect their mental health. But the problem runs deeper. What happens when referees start making mistakes not because they lack skill, but because they're afraid? Many walk onto the field already terrified of what might happen after the final whistle. They try to be perfect just to avoid another wave of attacks. But in football, perfection doesn't exist. And the more they try to please, the more they become targets. Being a referee isn't just about blowing the whistle. It's about studying rulebooks, staying physically prepared, and dealing with constant psychological pressure. And all of that takes a toll: mental exhaustion. Burnout syndrome is becoming increasingly common among referees. Many simply can't handle the emotional burden anymore and walk away from the profession. The exhaustion doesn't just come from the games, it comes from everything around them. The intense demands from federations, grueling training sessions, the lack of recognition, and the ever-present fear of making a mistake turn the job into an unbearable burden. Many referees develop symptoms of chronic anxiety, insomnia, and even panic attacks before major matches. Football, which should be a passion, becomes a toxic and intolerable environment. And the worst part? There is no structured psychological support for these professionals. Most referees are left to deal with this pressure on their own, with nowhere to turn. For many, the only way out is to put down the whistle and start over, far away from the sport they once loved so deeply. The hatred toward referees has gone far beyond acceptable limits. In lower league competitions, it's not uncommon for referees to be physically assaulted by players and fans. There have been cases where referees were beaten, hospitalized, and even killed. The most terrifying part? Many of these attacks happen in front of hundreds of people, and no one does anything. There are videos online of referees being chased across the pitch, surrounded by furious players, and fans storming the field to attack them. What should be a sport turns into a war zone. In amateur and youth leagues, where security is practically non-existent, the violence is even more brutal. Referees are assaulted simply because one team didn't agree with a call. Many leave the profession after being attacked, traumatized by the fear of ever stepping onto a football pitch again. And don't think this only happens in small matches. Even at major international competitions, referees have been followed, threatened, and required police escorts to leave stadiums. The message is clear: in football, those who make the decisions are always in danger. But the big question is, how long will this be normalized? How long will referees have to risk their physical safety just for doing their job? This is the most serious point. Some referees simply can't take it anymore. The pressure, the constant hate, the isolation, it all leads to the worst possible outcome. Cases of referees who have taken their own lives aren't widely publicized, but they exist. And they prove that football urgently needs to address the mental health crisis in officiating. One of the most striking cases was German referee Babak Rafati, who attempted suicide in 2011 just hours before officiating a Bundesliga match. He was found in his hotel room after years of enduring extreme pressure and severe depression. Thankfully, he survived and now speaks openly about the importance of mental health for referees. Another heartbreaking case was John C. McCabe, a Scottish referee who took his own life in 2021 after suffering intense pressure and online abuse for his on-field decisions. He became the target of widespread hate on social media, and the emotional weight became too much to bear. These are just a few examples. How many more referees are suffering in silence? How many more will have to reach this point before football starts taking care of the mental health of its officials? The reality is harsh: behind a whistle, there are lives being destroyed. And often, the ending is irreversible. The truth is, no one steps onto the field to be hated. But referees live that reality every single day. It's time for football to recognize that referees are human beings. They make mistakes, yes, but they also suffer. Behind a uniform is someone who feels, who fears, who fights just to keep going. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. There's another video right here on the screen that I'm sure you'll want to watch. Click now, and I'll see you there.